The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Hello, everyone. You're welcome to Leadership Podcast. We are into another edition of The Big Issue. And of course, the big issue of the day is APC crisis and the emergence of a factional caretaker committee. I am your regular host, George Agba is my name. And as usual, our in-house analysts are here in the studio with me. We have Chibuzo Kaide and Paul Agbo. Well, and for the big issue of the day, some members of the APC on Monday formed a parallel national caretaker committee and purportedly sacked the Malabuni-led caretaker extraordinary national convention planning committee and scheduled the party's convention for February 26 next year. But the Buni-led caretaker committee disarmed the group, which it described as impostors, and asked security agents to swoop on them. Of course, the new group, which appointed President Muhammadu Buhari as head of its advisory committee, also named Speaker of the House of Representatives, Femi Gbajabiamila, Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu, and others as members of the new caretaker committee. Well, the arrowhead of this new caretaker committee, I would say it became very necessary to save the party. But the Buni-led caretaker committee said that they received a report of inquiries from the media concerned APC members on the felonious activities of a purported group parading themselves as progressive youth movement. Well, APC is back to the trenches, and of course, Chibuzo, I think the whole thing is now becoming clearer. And we now understand why some few weeks ago, security operatives cut down the National Secretariat of the governing party. And one would have wondered what would have been the reason for such security presence. But now it's becoming clearer. I think these are the kind of things they were trying to do.
Absolutely. But you know, what you try to contain, you can contain a physical thing, but something that comes from a deeper place, much deeper place, cannot be contained when it comes to a geographical thing. At this stage, APC is really in a terrible place, a very terrible place. Some people use the expression of APC being you know, no, but talking seriously now, it's unfortunate that a party that held so much promise gave Nigerians a lot of an outlet, you know, in the way they coined it, an outlet to provide a different platform on which an ideological system could run, and of course transform into possible better governance structure, appears to be crumbling before our eyes. So you can imagine the impact of that kind of situation. It's really sad. It's really sad. It's really sad because they gave so much hope, they promised so much, but their inability to handle their internal issues appears to be undoing them. And now they appear to be perhaps a bit worse off than what the now opposition party used to be, which is the PDP. Because I say that because if you look at how the PDP came through its processes from congresses to all of the congresses, local government, ward, and state, and now the national convention, and you look at what the APC is trying to do now, it's really an eyesore and a terrible testament as to what a party that promised to do better is experiencing. They have become, sadly, an issue of sole reference. The other day, I think it was my dear colleague here who referred to them as having 99
party chairman.
So these are the realities on the ground, and it doesn't tell well for our political system. One would expect that the APC would have done a whole lot better than what we're experiencing now. But for them to sweep this away and just try to brush this under the carpet, I don't think it would help in any way. The implication it would have for the larger Nigerian society is what we refer as.
Well, Paul, you've heard what Chibuzo said. There's every indication here that the party, the governing party, is tottering towards implosion. And of course, with the new group, factional group coming up now to declare themselves the caretaker committee of the party, there is every likelihood that such a group of persons will just come sit down, take such kind of action without a very strong backup. I'm very sure that there are forces behind this factional group. Don't you think so?
Of course, George, I agree with you. The group has got rules. You've got a face behind. If you recall, the Marafa group in Zamfara, the national body to conduct the Congress of Zamfara. And if you recall, the Marafa group also lampooned the Buni-led Caretaker Committee and declared that all their activity amounts to nothing, illegality, nudity. So the picture is becoming clearer at the national level now. And I blame the leadership of the APC stakeholders for not conducting or organizing Congress long ago. They would have managed one way or the other and have a leadership of the party before now. This is not the time for factional chairmen in the APC. They have not even resolved the over 99, the over 90 state chairman issue. More than some papers report have it that over 20 states are in crisis. If you recall, just recently, was it Thursday last week, that government invaded the meeting of a factional group, purportedly loyal to the Minister of Interior. Yes, yes. Government invaded a meeting of those factional groups at Osogbo. It goes to tell you that look, the party is facing serious crisis, and it's not good at all for the party, because by June, July 2022, candidates ought to have emerged going by the timetable set by INEC. So convention is February 22, but that's I don't want to use called the Buni group factional group, by the Buni-led Caretaker Committee. Convention has been slated for February 22nd. Then this Mustafa Audu-led factional group announcing their own is February 6th or February 26th. So it is not good for the party, because when are they going to clean up the mess before they will now prepare for 2023 election? There are more issues coming, because they have to elect delegates at the state level. These are the delegates are the ones that will now, if they eventually the president does not sign this, the electoral, or they expunge that aspect out of the electoral, the indirect primaries. The delegates also play vital role in the selection of leaders, candidates, aspirants. So the party does not need all this crisis. It is dangerous for the party at this time. It is not good for our democracy. And this is something they allow the matter to fester.
And I think that not even just allowing it to fester, then why they allowed it to fester, from what I understand, is that they had been trying as much as possible to do some cover.
Cosmetic.
Yes, window dressing.
Yes, window dressing. They'll be window dressing the whole issue. And I think the APC allowed this matter to go beyond control. And it has gone to the level that even stakeholders are finding it difficult. And one other thing now is that some stakeholders don't want to come out openly to challenge the leadership of the party. So they are now using groups. They are now using groups.
That's true.
It is this new faction led by Mustafa Audu. It's not a one-man show. It's not a one-man show. There are people who are, I said it on this platform, there are many people in the APC are not happy. After the world, local government, and state congresses, at the world and local government level, the skirmishes, the crisis were a little bit manageable at that level. The stakeholders manage it at that level because several states have not agreed after the world and local government congress, but it's being managed at the micromanaged at the state and zonal level. But the state congresses pitch several big actors in the party against each other, especially the Abuja politicians and the home-based politicians. And that is what is playing out today. And it's dangerous for the party.
Well, let's just quickly take a short break. We'll actually look at the crux of the matter when we come back. And at the same time, we'll be expecting our viewers there to contribute to the big issue of the day by their way of comment. And we expect that by the time we come back from this short break, we'll be receiving their views on the big issue. We'll be back shortly.
For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.
The Big Issue. Breaking down the issues that matter.
Well, welcome back. We are still on the big issue in leadership podcasts. And of course, the big issue of the day is APC crisis and the emergence of Factional Caretaker Committee. Chibus was discussing. APC, just like you rightly said, that somebody pointed out that APC, or we were always talking of being in soup. I don't think in this case APC is in soup.
Hot soup.
Which one is hotter? Is it soup or I think APC is inside a very hot bowl of porridge. That is the situation now. And now let's look at the matter. I think this infighting within the party is not just about, I think this factional group are just face being projected by certain people. What do you think may be the major actors or the major block fighting within the party?
Well, I think this takes us back to the whole APC idea and how APC came to be. It was a coming together of different political platforms. They call themselves legacy parties. There's the ACN, there's the CBC, there's the ANPP, and there's a half of the APGA, APGA. Although they call it Apuga. So they all came together, and in the light of how the arrangements were made, we first covered how the merger happened. They allotted to themselves positions based on the strengths and how the kind of spread they had going into the arrangement. So there was the CPC, considering the strength of Buhari, had the presidency. There was a 9 million, not less than 9 million votes already in his pocket going into that election. So it was only expected that he should have the presidency, and then the ACN being the next major political platform. But the challenge of having a Muslim arrangement produced Oshibajo as vice president. So the ACN slot had that. And then the ANPP, which, of course, if you look at it critically, would have been, because the CPC was a breakout from ANPP. Buhari was formerly of ANPP. Every other arrangement was formerly of ANPP, apart from the ACN, which grew from the AD. So in that sense, it was only fitting because ANPP had become whittled. Its influence had become whittled to the build up to 2015. So they gave them the national party chairmanship. So it was in that light that this political office, I think, Abga had the national secretary. That's in the person of I've forgotten his name now. The senator. One senator. I remember his name. No, but in the course of events, when it was becoming pretty difficult for the party to, and then the NPDP came in to the picture, and the debate about whether they were the ones that actually gave them the victory or not is still there. But they came in, and the spark of the crisis that has become of today's APC started with would I call it a sense of mistrust as to who gets to get what. Because when these other camps got what they got, the NPDP appeared to be left in the cold. So they had to fight their way to get the Senate presidency seat and the House of Reps seat. Of course, we cannot remember how tough it was for them to get that position and how all of that process became so turbulent between 2019 and 2015 rather and 2019. So after them, a lot of people expected that the party would have found a way of blending and remodeling such that they would build around a consensus idea that will make them become a political party. But it will seem that from the look of things, that process has not, panned out. Because now, even within the party, there are concerns that the CPC arm appears to be getting the bulk share of what should play within the party. And it is raising, a lot of concerns among party members. So, to some extent, at least a few people I've spoken to within the party, arrangement, tend to think that this sense of trying to have the CPC galvanize the bulk of the party structure appears to be a major concern within party ranks, such that those who are not within from the CPC family appear to be alienated from how things should run within the party. Of course, there's a quick reference to the vice presidency. The vice presidency being, an APC enclave. But people say, to a large extent, the vice presidency is merely, not my balance, but in the balance that is out there, a spare tire arrangement. So it shows that if these concerns are anything to go by, it shows the internal mutual suspicion that has been going on, and to a large extent that has not been properly managed, that has led to what we have now. Perhaps if the president has made much more effort to ensure, as the leader of the party, because at the end of the day, it comes down to one person. Now they don't have the BOT. What what we saw within the, I use the PDP as a reference now. What we saw within the PDP was when matters became too intense and all of the forces must pull at each other. When it became so intense, there had to be a rallying point. And within the PDP, what we saw was the DOT coming forward and saying, okay, you can bring all your complaints at us, and we'll find a way of providing a space for you to express what you think and eventually find a suitable solution for everybody. But the reverse appears to be the case within the APC because they don't have, a BOT arrangement. Perhaps what they had next would have been a presidency. But it would seem that the presidency is a bit rather too laid back.
And the president who is supposed to be the leader of the party, tend to be too indifferent about the happenings in the party.
And so it creates a lot of suspicion and people not, because they are also afraid of not embarrassing their party and possibly the repercussion that might come from that. They would rather go underground, and that is why we have all of the factional arrangements propping up. And by the time 2023 comes around, the odds become higher. The stakes become higher. What do I stand to lose becomes the slogan amongst political actors. What do I stand to lose? The president is no longer on the ballot. So why shouldn't I dare it all? And so that is what you begin to see unfold. And that is why we are having over 90-something factions or camps or groups, and all of that culminating into what we have, a faction boldly coming up to say Buni has to go and we are taking charge of the structure. It is interesting that they also fixed February for their national convention. Whether we are going to see a parallel national convention is an interesting prospect to behold.
Well, I think that is where it boils down to. But from one thing I've come to observe is that despite all this, I think the major block in the party, the main block, the block that wield the most influence, the government, they tend to have filed behind their own colleague, Buni. And that is what led to the meeting that came that came up with the decision that the national convention should take place in February. They even went to the presidential villa to inform the president as leader of the party. Now, with this new factional group popping up, can they withstand the major, most influential bloc within the party, like the governors, who we know
even though some of those governors decide, or most of the governors decide to put behind their own, but because some of the governors are going, they are rounding up their term alongside the president. So there's right now there is a struggle of interest in states where governors are rounding up.
a second term governor.
Yes, like Kaduna, we have a second term governor there. Kano, we have a second term governor. In Katsina, we have a second term governor. In Niger, in Kebbi, we will have second term governor in those states. Which other state again? Ondo, and Ondo. No, it's not. It's first time.
It's the first time.
It's the first time governor. Yes, Lagos first time governor. Then we have states where PDP are in charge. APC is opposition.
Yeah.
So it's free for all.
Exactly.
Like Benue, like Enugu, like Abia, like Anambra. We know the crisis there.
Yeah, happening presently now.
Yes. Like Rivers, you know the crisis in Rivers. It has been persistent. It has become a way of life in that place. You have the data issue, where conflict of interest resulting from the Congress. So you see, not all the governors might not really have their way, because there are also there are internal crises, power struggle. Because look at the case of Kwara now. When you can't tell me that Lai Mohammed will go to Kwara and get anything done at this moment.
At this moment,
Because first off,
the governor has taken full charge of the of the
you,
state.
you want to push Lai Mohammed out of the party,
Not possible.
and the party
He's a
even
henchman at the
no
national
matter
level.
how what you be at the national level, all politics
Falls
is
back to
local.
the state.
It's local.
It's local.
Local. It falls back to the state,
Your
to your
ward.
ward.
Aye.
And that is why World Congress is very,
very
very
important.
key, very important. If you have the structure at the world level, you can even remove a sitting governor. True. You can remove it with this indirect
The
primaries.
direct primaries there.
No,
now.
indirect primaries. You
Mm.
can remove a sitting governor. I can assure you that.
Is it indirect primaries?
It's indirect primaries.
Don't forget that indirect primaries, I think it
that's
is the
the
governors
delegates.
that controls the delegates.
That is why the Congress matters.
Yes.
If you are in charge, if you are in charge of the World Congress and local government Congress, leave the state Congress.
If you
How many of
your
them are
henchmen at that level,
the world produce more than 50% of the delegates, and that is why it matters a lot to this Abuja politician, and that is why some of the National Assembly members who are usually shortchanged when it comes to primary election, they are usually shortchanged because the governors, the big stakeholder, take over the structure. They now they determine where the votes go. And that's why these National Assembly members are very worried. So they believe in the direct primaries, that the direct primaries will bring a lot of them back. That is the belief, that this direct primary, because if you are popular within your senatorial zone, within your constituency, with direct primaries, you can make it. But with indirect primary, it is the governor who determine, who will now say, look, this is where all of you will go.
They will dance in between.
And they will come there in one hotel, keep them cool, give them everything, then give them their package and tell them, this is what you are going to do. And you dare not disobey. So these are some of the issues. So the crisis has not been resolved. George, there's a bigger problem coming.
yes.
Even though the governor's queue behind Buni, it's like Mohammed going to queue behind Buni in this case. It's obvious.
And they have the first Keyamo and other.
You have the Festus Keyamo, you have
from the onset.
Yes.
Yes.
You have several issues like that.
Well, Chibuzo, what do you think are at least in every kind of situation happening, we will always know that there are permutations. And of course, Nigerians are very eager to know what happened next. In the governing party, what do you see coming up in the next few weeks between now and the convention?
Well, the options are, for me, I think the options are quite obvious. They're going to bully their way through. What I mean bully their way through is, first, they're going to recognize only ward, local government, and state congresses that they think will be in their interest. And when I say they, I mean largely those who appear to control the structure, like the governor of the party. Yes. So along those lines, interests will align. So they're going to bully their way through and say, okay, whoever does not align with this, you're on your own. You almost be on your own. Let me use that expression. So they're going to go ahead with that and go all the way to the convention because they really need to do a convention. It is critical. They can't afford to push this with the way things have gone now. And I think that is what the Audu, people, Audu faction is trying to pull to ensure that the party does not shift the convention any further than the February it has faced. Because there's a notion out there that the February thing was just an arrangement to buy time
And to calm tension.
To calm tension, exactly, to calm tension. Such that when it gets to that time, they can also say,
They can now
because
look
of
for a
this,
tangible
they can push
reason
it again.
to shift it again.
So I think that is what the Audu guys are trying to, if what we hear, anything to go by, that is what they are trying to push for. And so as it is now, they are likely going to play along the lines of the ones, because ego, whether I like it or not, politics is all about ego. It's about that time where they have to stamp their feet down and dig in and ensure that, we are not backtracking, and allowing our opponents, get the privilege of good perception. So they're going to dig in and say, okay, all of what we have agreed in the build up to now has to continue so that we can do national convention and keep out with the hope that we reach out to them subsequently. They agree and try to make them understand that it seems like the pattern with our political actors, as it were. But there is one thing that remains obvious. People are really aggrieved with this. The concept of bullying and having your way, whichever way you do, remains a critical problem within our political space. People want to be sure that they have as much level playing ground to push out their ideas and to contest for position, if you call it a political party arrangement. And then when there's a sense that they are being denied that, you can be sure that they are always going to fight it out as much as they can. Even if they don't win, at least to create an impression that we did our best and not go down as sole losers. So it's going to be really interesting to see how the party manages. But like I said earlier, I think that if the president were to step up and come out of his cocoon, and become not just a president and not just a party leader, but a party man, and say, okay, my people, let us stop politics and let us see how we can, galvanize this political party, galvanize our people, and push this whole arrangement beyond just us, and see how we can provide what our people really need. It will go a long way to solve the situation we are facing. But in the absence of that, I don't think whatever, because if you watch, you get a sense of how difficult the situation is. APC in the last couple of years has produced not less than 3 reconciliation committees. The last one I think is the Senator Abdullahi Committee. We've had even a party leader had to become National Reconciliation Committee person, and it didn't work out. So it shows you that this thing requires the main man, which is Buhari, who for many would say, okay, if we can have an audience with this man and whatever he tells us, perhaps it can help. But it's a difficult call, because we also saw how he tried to mediate in the Kano crisis, WJ and Fonfaso, and it flopped. So if you use that as a reference, it might be a tough sell.
Well, we've heard it all. The governing party in the country, the APC, is in crisis. And of course, the situation is becoming more glaring. Like the party members are now becoming more courageous enough, just like what we saw yesterday, a factional group coming out to declare a caretaker committee different from the Buni-led caretaker committee. It goes a long way to show that interest in the party are becoming more desperate. And let's see how it goes from now till the convention, and how the party can be able to put its act together ahead of the 2023 election. That is the much we can take for today's edition of the Big Issue. Thank you for keeping tab with us out there. And of course, I'd like to thank our in-house analysts, Paul and Chibuzo, for addressing the matter on the Big Issue appropriately. Join us same time tomorrow for another edition of the Big Issue. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080-3688-6158. Last Word Leadership Podcast Studio. You have the last word.